Are we in a recession? The answer is yes, if you live in one of these 22 states. And this is coming in from Moody's. I want to go over with you guys. I think it's an important topic, as I always say, follow the money. And here's a map of their data. Again, this is from Moody's. It says these states are now in recession, 22 states. So the red states on this map are the ones in recession. The green states are the ones in expansion. And then you have the yellow states in a treading water state. And there's something really important to notice on this one. And I would say California and New York are at the treading water. So they're kind of the middle. And if either of those things in a recession, it's really bad news for the country. Also worth noting, I noticed right away, Texas and Florida, according to Moody's, are in expansion. And those are obviously be Trump states. And Trump and Russ Vogt, they've been talking about, and if you don't know Vogt, he is one of the Project 2025 guys. And essentially they've been talking about cutting funding to blue states, and that would really, really hurt California and New York. Also want to go through this data, and with any of these conversations, your situation may be different than the nation as a whole, right? And it just, everything depends on which industry you're in and your particular, circumstances. So don't necessarily let me tell you like everything that's going on. Just, I want to hear from you and your experiences. Do you agree or disagree? Say, hey, I'm in one of these states. No, it's booming here. I disagree with the data, or I totally agree with the data. I want to hear from you on the ground. So let's see what it says here. It says the economy, U.S. economy, is very close to falling into a damaging contraction, and many states are already in the recession. That's according to Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's. Zandi estimates that 22 states and the District of Columbia are now experiencing persistent economic weakness and job losses that are likely to continue. So it's not over, right? And then another 13 states are just treading water. So you add that up together. So 22 plus 13, you got 35 states are either treading water or in recession. So not that many people are benefiting right now. And I also want to point this out too, when you look at these kind of maps, that it may also cover up. So for example, let's say Elon Musk is in your state. Elon Musk, I think he has a home in Texas. And let's say Elon Musk is making tons of money. He's like, oh my God, things are going great, right? So maybe that would cover up numbers of other people who are not going so great. And essentially the billionaire class, like the Elon Musk, are absolutely having fantastic lives, right? Or you could look at Donald Trump, and he's out golfing every weekend, building this gold palace, etc. So I always want to state that the economic numbers for a state or a nation may not necessarily reflect your individual circumstances just as a whole. And I've also been seeing numbers to where they're saying like consumer spending is increasingly, right? The composite, the makeup of consumer spending is increasingly made up by wealthier individuals. The percentage of it is. So it covers up what happening in other parts of society. This also says here, California and New York are among the states that are treading water. If either of these falter, it would tip the economy into recession. And I mentioned that before, so pay attention to California and New York. A separate forecast by UCLA says a recession in California is now plausible. And the first thing I thought of when I heard that was the situation we just talked about a couple days ago in LA is really, really bad. And the same in Georgia, actually, where entertainment jobs are down, right? And there's multiple factors. There's multiple reasons for this. So there's more competition abroad. Also, too, just the changing media landscape. A lot of people are now watching stuff online, streaming. It's just a different world. So there's a couple things going on. And then you have the slowdown in the economy. On top of that, we were supposed to get job data this past Friday. That didn't come because of the government shutdown. And they also pulled their pick for the head of the BLS, meaning that last time we were supposed to get job numbers from the government. They were bad, and Trump basically fires the person because he doesn't like bad numbers. So just fire the person who puts out the numbers. And then he tries to get his own incompetent person in. They ended up pulling that pick and have yet to announce who's going to give us government numbers on jobs. And now with the shutdown, we're not getting any numbers. And I think there's a possibility we don't get any numbers going forward. I think there's a real possibility that as things could get really ugly. And if you follow the Trump economy, they keep talking about AI and crypto, yet it's all a massive bubble. This just came out yesterday. The AI bubble is 17 times the size of the dot-com frenzy and 4 times the subprime bubble, right? So it's big. Talking about the AI bubble. I personally think it's a bubble. Jeff Bezos even mentioned it as well. So did Sam Altman. Bezos basically said, basically everyone's just investing in multiple things, and just because they're all throwing money at it, and some will work, some won't work. Here's the actual quote from Bezos. I'll read it. He says, when people get very excited, as they are today, about artificial intelligence, for example, every experiment gets funded, right? Everyone's just throwing money at this thing. Every company gets funded, the good ideas and the bad ideas, and investors have a hard time in the middle of this excitement distinguishing between the good ideas about ideas. And then Sam Altman said recently, that's the OpenAI guy, he said, are we in a phase where investors as a whole are overexcited about AI? My opinion is yes. Is the AI the most important thing to happen in a very long time? My opinion is also yes. However, talking about the AI stuff, I know that's where all the hype is, but I do want to talk about other parts of the economy. So, for example, Starbucks, they're really struggling. This was in the Wall Street Journal today. Starbucks roller coaster week of job cuts and store closures. They've had 6 quarters of decline. I was looking at this here. I knew they were struggling, but I didn't realize it was 6 quarters. It says, now with cafe closures and staff cuts, a company long known for its sprawling growth has abruptly shrunk. They just can't grow anymore. They got more competition, and plus, it's expensive to go to Starbucks. You guys know this. I just tell you the truth. My wife likes coffee, and every time we go, and I'm just like, why do we want to buy overpriced coffee? I always say that. And actually, these days, we go to other places. There's just so many choices and so much competition out there. So Starbucks is not the only game in town anymore. And plus, again, the economy's on a downturn. Nicole and his team have said major changes were needed to rebound from 6 consecutive quarters of declining same-store sales. Regarding also the state of the economy, it's reflected in our entertainment. For example, just yesterday, my wife and I went to go see a Korean movie. It's called No Other Choice. It's pretty good. And basically, it's about a guy who gets laid off. It's like in the opening scene, and then goes through struggles after that. The same kind of scenario as Squid Game. That's basically what both of these things are about. And I mentioned both these Korean things because it is, they've been so successful lately because they capture what people are feeling and thinking. And, I want to mention American stuff too, because I just want to talk about what can I say? Like, part of navigating the world is understanding what's happening around you, so you don't feel like confused all the time and frustrated. And I think that's what a lot of people feel. And I really know, guys, I really know. That's why I talk with you this stuff every day about this. If you haven't seen the documentary American Factory, it's on Netflix. Check it out. I mention this one all the time because it's really an eye opener. I think they filmed this for maybe 5 years in a row. Like they follow these people for a long period, and it gives you a real good sense of the situation in the Midwest in the USA, and what happens when a Chinese company comes in and basically gives jobs to people. I think it's Ohio, but just watch it. It really explores the U.S. situation and how dire it is for some people in the economies. I think it matters. Regarding the going back to this the recession stuff, let's see some more here. It says, White House tariffs on imported goods have caused uncertainty, right? Forcing companies to pull back from expansion plans and confusing supply chains. No labor force growth this year has also hurt the economy. So no one's hiring. I've also heard no one's necessarily firing yet, although Trump wants to fire one in the government. And then with the tariffs all over the map, just companies just can't plan for the future. And so that's create massive freeze. And then you had to mention Elon Musk and the job cuts, right? He wants to cut everyone with Doge. And the Doge thing was funny because my wife was actually asking me about that today. She's like, what happened to the Doge people? And it's like, Elon Musk quit that thing. I don't know if his people are still actively there. I know because I know she had remember the Doge kids at one point. That was when the Trump first got elected. I don't know how many of them still there. I was just thinking in my head out loud. My wife asked me about it, and I'm not sure the situation the Doge at the moment. But I do know that Russ Vought wants to cut as many federal employees as possible, and I keep hearing about whole agencies being completely gutted. So that will have major ripple effects on the economy also, which isn't necessarily reflected here, but I just want to mention that. This also says, on a national level, the National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession as significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. And I think already some states are in that now. The organization puts particular emphasis on a few indicators. So this is when you want to look at data, right? So non-farm payroll employment, personal income adjusted for inflation excluding transfers, consumer spending adjusted for inflation, and industrial production. So my understanding of just looking at this stuff, consumer spending is the most important thing in the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is made of consumers. Like you're looking at like roughly 70% of it is consumer spending, and the wealthiest class, be it Elon Musk, et cetera, make up a large part of that. People towards the bottom are really struggling right now because prices are high. People put a bunch of stuff on their credit cards just to make ends meet. And with the situation in the USA where Trump has a tariff that makes things even more expensive and there's no relief coming, I just personally think it's going to get really ugly because once, people just can't afford anything at all anymore. And then Trump cuts like food benefits and these kind of things that help people. I just think it's going to get ugly. And then you got more layoffs, be it, let's say the federal layoffs, then kind of ripple into the private layoffs because we're all connected. I'll give you an example. There was a city in West Virginia I remember hearing about, and many people in that city, like the highest paid employees were federal workers. And it was I think it was West Virginia, and they, those kind of people were more MAGA based, like, oh yeah, fire everyone because Trump says it's going to be awesome. And then wait a minute, I'm going to fire myself, right? Like it doesn't make sense, but that's the point of this stuff is like a lot of stuff that happens with the Trumpy stuff doesn't make sense. So basically, when the federal employees in that particular, rural town, say West Virginia, started losing their jobs, that rippled over to the restaurants, rippled over to the hotels, and just, everything would go south because again, we're all connected. And you can't run an economy that only benefits people like Elon Musk. It doesn't, at the end of the day, there's no one to buy products to keep the cycle going. I know. They also got this. The prevailing narrative, let's read some more. The prevailing narrative among economists is that the U.S. economy's expansion will continue driven by consumer spending. Okay. But I just want to mention that, remember, a lot of it is Elon Musk, that kind of class is consumer spending. Richard Moody, chief economist at Regions Bank, noted that the third quarter U.S. GDP growth is estimated to be rising at 3.8% annual growth. The latest data on business investment, jobless claims, and consumer spending have been decent, he added. So the business investment one I want to mention, because that's something that Trump people always brag about. It's like, oh, look how great, all these businesses are investing in the, capital expenditures, et cetera. So you have to understand that a lot of companies invested, bought equipment and all sorts of stuff ahead of the tariffs kicking in. So it kind of made the numbers not accurate of where we're going in the future, right? So if you buy a whole bunch of stuff in January and then you're done to the rest of the year, right? You have to understand that, like, well, maybe there's going to be that it's not going to be repeat economic activity. Another way to think about it as well is the new iPhone just came out. This is just one example, and it really wasn't that big of a news, to be honest. It just wasn't. The situation, these things are expensive. You already got a phone. You don't need to buy a new one. And like literally my wife and I were talking about this situation. Like I don't remember when we bought our last phone because like I have right here, it's kind of old and ratty. You'll see it. It's got a rough on the side, but this stuff's expensive and my phone works fine. And it's the same situation. So depending on, when you upgrade your last equipment in your company, how long do you expect that to last? And chances are you're going to try to get it to last longer. And that's something a lot of people have done. They either purchase something in, say, January, February, and then they're set for the next, we'll say 3-4 years or however long it's going to take until they get something new. And so this is where you may see a real slowdown. So I think that's covering it up. But yeah, I understand that if you look at the macro numbers, everything's great, but you got to look at what projections are and sort of also how people are feeling. I know because feeling matters. It matters because if you feel uncomfortable at your job situation in the future, you're probably not going to go out and make a big purchase or spend a bunch on Christmas because you're just like, you just need to be careful here, right? Or if you see that there's no relief for medical costs, you got to plan ahead for that. All these kind of things. And you guys all know your own situations. This again from Moody's, he says, but Bandy said the latest data didn't change his views. So good to get different views. Quote, GDP and consumer spending are stronger, but the job market is weaker. And that's a real warning sign. Right? Because that's what I was mentioning. The GDP and consumer spending could reflect more Elon Musk doing okay, but not necessarily everyone else. Job market is key, right? A common denominator of the states in recession is that they have weak farm economies or faltering light manufacturing. So you can look at the chart here, and just to be curious, and this would take time to go through. And I'd be like to hear from your, in your states that you're in, because you're going to know where you are. What do you think about, say, the farm economy or the light manufacturing in the various states? So what else to say here? And it's good to go through this stuff. They also talk about any part of the country whose economies depend on goods, producing activities. So this would be agriculture, mining, light manufacturing are currently weak. It's according to Zandy, who's the economist over at Moody's. Adding that a weak transportation sector is exacerbating the downturn. More, the contraction in New England region is not unusual because of its slow population growth trends. So I guess the population isn't growing in New England. That region doesn't grow very strongly even in the best of times. But Zandy said he was surprised that Georgia is in a recession. This state has seen significant pullback in domestic immigration, so not that many people coming in part because of the high home values. I guess it's just too expensive to live there, it's Georgia, according to them. Pennsylvania, meanwhile, is a surprise on the upside, he added, with the state benefiting from strength in education and healthcare. Interesting. So I guess according to him, the numbers on Pennsylvania education and healthcare, it must be employment data is okay. But, again, this is all going to relate to your particular situation. My personal thoughts on this stuff, I think things are way worse than anyone knows. And it's bad when the government doesn't want to show you data. And I don't know if we're going to get data on this stuff. I also know just sort of seeing stuff that I have seen, the youth unemployment is around 9-ish%, something like that, maybe double digit. And, again, you're going to know the situation because I keep hearing there's the actual data, then the anecdotal data, though, of so many kids that just can't find work. Like they just got out of school, they can't find work. Or even if they do find something, it's only going to be like temporary part-time or just doesn't pay very much. As you guys know, it doesn't match the cost. So many are moving back at home with their parents. And I see stories also to where like people, like you'll see story after story where I wanted to retire but can't because I'm just too worried about the way things cost right now. And it's just the numbers don't add up. And things are really tough out there. And I also want to say it's not just USA, it's many countries around the world are experiencing this because we're all connected. So that's my thoughts on this. I'd like to hear yours. Again, this is the map. Red is recession, green is expansion, and yellow is treading water. Just want to hear your thoughts. When you see you're standing here, do you agree or disagree with that? Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the next video.